you will need to be a learner, because today code generation that is there is commoditized. We are literally testing, saying that, okay, we are going to start the interview, open your chat GPT, show us how you're going to pull out code from it during the interview process. That is where we would want to see that how you can optimize yourself and how have you also absorbed this new technology that is coming, because that's the future. Do not stress on the designations that you had, because each firm have their own set of things. You could be a VP at place, it could be a director at some place, it could be somewhere else at something else. So do not hanker on that part of it at all. What is really needed, okay, the key thing is, what is the problem did you solve?
Hi everyone, welcome to Tech Talent 101 by Hirist.tech, a series started by Hirist that will bring together leaders from across industries to discuss how AI, emerging technologies, post-pandemic shifts, and all that lies ahead really will reshape the talent landscape across software development, data science, cybersecurity, and fundamentally all things tech. To kick off the series, I have with me someone very special. He's a dear partner, somebody I look up to personally, who has over 2 decades of HR leadership experience across industries, from the likes of LG Electronics, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Nate Advisory, and now with Avalara. Avalara is a software solutions company, automating, problem solving, all things tax across systems, ERPs, industries, and most importantly, across the globe. So now that we begin, Anand, let me open with a first question, specifically with regards to the roles that Avalara has been posting with Hirist, which I know is something that you all hire for in great numbers, which is around software development. Since you've been in the industry across so many years and seen so much, how do you think the role of a software developer or a product developer has changed in what I'd like to sort of call 3 phases? I'd say one is pre-pandemic, second being post-pandemic, and now I'd like to call it the post-AI/ML era.
So, I have 3 decades, and in 3 decades, things have changed a lot. And we started when Y2K was there, and Y2K needed a very different set of people and skills, and the need was very different, right? So that is where it started, the whole, the outsourcing of IT, or India becoming the global hub for IT was just beginning. It was very nascent, and so was the talent landscape. So let's fast forward and come to pre-pandemic. Okay, that's like 15 years after that, right? So that is when, specific to India, the talent landscape started maturing, where worldwide industries knew as to what is required and what could be done out of this place. Yeah, and that is when systems and processes were being put in place, and scalability was looked at. So this is the time you would have seen CMM, CMMI being the key things, right? And then the PCMM came in, and all these processes and stuff were put in, where the services sector started growing big. Yeah, and they really brought in the whole economic change in India itself. So there was this new economic class that emerged because of these, right? So we should give due credit to all of the IT leaders who saw it then in terms of how things were happening. While this was hogging the limelight, they were the very early adopters who were there from the US and other places, who started looking at India in terms of a product kind of lens, right? The way big, the way earlier ones were, I don't know if you've heard, they're like Texas Instruments was one of the first ones to come in. Okay. Verifone was one of the first to come in. So these were the early adopters who brought in product into it, right? And you could see Intel's also then following suite, where these guys started then building something very niche and started really showing success stories, because while we heard about the services kind of businesses, you never heard about an IBM research lab. But the key guys knew what IBM research lab was, where the best of the minds used to go there and work out at those places. Similarly, you would find the chip industry also doing very well. the semiconductor places. Yeah. So that was the other niche areas that were out there. And that brought in the biggest boom. So that was a peak where we had a lot of hiring happening, a lot of action happening. And this followed like a whole cycle, right? So where you had the chain of US, Europe, Japan, Korea, China, right? All of them now coming into India to set up shop, and they had success stories immediately. Yep. So that is where the trend started moving, and then came your pandemic. Yeah, it had a very interesting set in terms of how do we work and how do we really collaborate. So a lot of so-called leadership thought were put into test, saying, can you really deliver out of home? And people did. Right. Yeah. So that is the most interesting part, that, assumptions always get tested, or what we think is a thought leadership becomes an assumption and then gets tested. Yeah. And these were really tough things. And that is the agility, or that's the mindset that really saw how quickly we could adopt. Like in 2-3 weeks, millions of these guys started working from home.
Yeah.
So again, from a leadership perspective, I would say that our assumptions or our thoughts were tested, okay, by something which was external, right? A thing which we really didn't know was going to hit us. So that was the interesting part. Yeah, we pivoted. I think the whole industry pivoted, delivered, and now it's the post-pandemic. Just while we were trying to say, okay, things are fine, we are back in office, is when AI has come in, and that is again going to really reset the talent landscape totally.
In terms of post-pandemic, you spoke about the fact that a lot of workforces, I mean, pretty much everybody had to go to a work from home model, which is something that most companies have been struggling with to correct back as we move back into office spaces.
Yeah.
With AI, of course, there's a lot of focus on automation, doing things at scale. Yeah. Do you find that the whole notion of returning to office, another wave of that notion being challenged in terms of the business rationale, not so much the official policies of organizations?
Right. So the business rationale, each company has its own driving force, right? So they have their own set of ethos and things that they need to address. So there is no one, I would take a very Indian term called Ramban, right? There is no one panacea for everything. So each of them are trying to address their own goals and their own culture in their own way. And we would leave it to that, yeah, because they would have their own set of problems. They would have their own set of guidelines which they want to address. Right. While that is happening from a business point of view, now we're at I'm talking about the 20 years of IT industry now moving. You have new generation also that has come in, right? So suddenly you have 3 generations of workforce in your own office.
Yes.
Yeah. And that is the other interesting part that would come in, saying these guys are very different. And they have a very different notion of what a work is, what life is, and how and where they want to move in terms of their careers. Yeah. So that is the interesting dynamic that is unfolding.
You've been exposed to hiring senior leaders across the spectrum, across several companies.
Right.
Today, other than, of course, having a great CV, worked with the right organizations, and also having the right keywords, which are there in your CV, which you've uploaded on platforms such as Hirist, how can a top talent highlight themselves? What can they do outside of these job boards, job platforms, to spotlight themselves and really reach out and be visible to leaders such as you?
So that's a very interesting thing. And, I've been having these discussions with so many of these leaders and the industry. Specific to the senior talent, right? The first thing is, this is more of a thing that we have seen, is that they need to have not a resume more than 1 page, okay? Because you're a CXO talent, you're trying to reach out to a CXO in your, in a prospective hire, and that CXO is not going to have time to look for more than a page or 2. that also puts in a perspective saying that am I very clear what my impact has been? That's the first thing I would say, that put it in a single sheet. That is one. Second, do not stress on the designations that you had, because each firm have their own set of things. You could be a VP at place, it could be a director at some place, it could be somewhere else at something else. So do not hanker on that part of it at all. What is really needed? Okay, the key thing is, what is the problem did you solve?
Right. I remember, in fact, on that note, I love the point you made about designations in particular, because, and I'm not specifically saying it's a problem with tech talent, but people who've grown in tech, they're optimized to really go deep on their skills, their technical skills. Yeah. What happens in specifically for leadership hiring is that the ability to communicate sometimes is not at the level that an organization would expect of a senior leader. And that comes out when you ask them, okay, tell me about the work that you've done. They'll open with the designation that I was the senior director for this particular function, instead of talking about the nature of the work.
Right.
And this was a very interesting conversation I had with one of the leaders for an IT services company in terms of what are the things they look out for, the red flags they look out for when they're meeting senior leaders. And that's the first thing, like you mentioned, that's the first thing they said too. If the person is harping too much on the designation versus the role and the problem they solved,
yes,
that's a bit of a red flag.
Yeah, let me also give the other insight, right? So while product companies have been the largest employers, the services company have been the largest one. The product companies look at it very differently, right? So the size of the team does not matter. Okay, I have seen that, people have said that I have like 25, 30, 100, 200 or 3,000 people as a team. That again is something they should move away from. And right. Again, look at saying that, you know what, I did 1 million API calls, and that I exploded to say, 10 or 100 million API calls. So you see the difference, right? Saying that I led a 100-member team to a 3,000-member team versus 1 million API to a 100 million API. Yeah, I'm just giving you one of these slots. Yeah, so that is what is needed. And the ask also from the industry today is not people leaders, but technical leaders who will take people along. So there is the flip that has happened.
Right. No, I think I think like with Avalara, and I think a lot of other companies that we engage with, we've seen the requirement for even senior leaders to not just have sort of designations or certain years of experience, but they should actively have coding skills as well, so that they can lead from the front. They know how to really put their hands on the task rather than. Yeah. Is that a notion that you would agree with?
So I more put it like a system level thinking, where they actually are going to be building with the higher order abstraction kind of thing, right? Mm-hmm. Where you're going to be looking at an end-to-end architecture or a solutioning that person has done, which is very different. So system level thinking is very different, and that is what needs to get highlighted. And also, having a product-minded engineering, right? So when you're talking about product-minded part of it, you need to iterate and iterate very fast, right? And also the next part would be that, not always the problems are well-defined. They're going to be very ambiguous.
Right.
Yeah. And they need to be bringing out things not in weeks or months, but in hours. So that kind of a product-minded engineering mindset is what would be the key winning card that they need to put forward.
I'll pick one of the things that you said, which I think is crucial, but doesn't get spoken of very much, which is mindset. Yeah. And the other thing being, how do you test mindset through a CV? That's not always an easy thing to do. Most hiring managers struggle with that because you need to have a certain ability to spot skills and talent in individuals to be able to figure out what the mindset of an individual may be in different scenarios. So, also talking about situational leadership. Will the person evolve to the different situations that get thrown at them? What's your view on testing mindset?
Oh, that's extremely important, right? So First thing is the global mindset. I mean, you could have been in the US or in Europe for 10, 15 years, but a global mindset is not that you are physically present in those places. A global mindset is where you'll be able to grasp things across geographies and turn it into an opportunity. Okay, that's one. Second is, again, because we are talking at the senior level, you need to understand your business. Where is the money coming from? Okay, and how is it you're impacting that return that's out there? If they cannot articulate these two things, it's very challenging for them to move higher. So the second part of it, right? So first we talked about the global mindset. The second is the business mindset too. You need to know which business you're in, what is the problem you're trying to solve, and why is the customer out there taking that $1 from their pocket and putting it into your pocket? If you do not know why they're doing it and how you're going to address that, then it's very challenging for you to really then move forward.
I'll talk about one more thing related to this. Of course, the topic being tech talent. So I think most of the questions are anyway related.
Yeah.
But let's say, for example, you're looking for a senior full stack developer. I'm just taking an example.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. There are 3 CVs that meet the criteria that's defined in terms of experience, geography, specific skills and modules that you need them to be equipped with. They meet the criteria. What will differentiate an average candidate from a good one to a great one in your eyes? If from a skill set or a CV perspective, they're all 3 at a similar level.
So if all 3 look good, okay, is when we would make the first call to the candidate. And in the first 10, 15 minutes, you'll be really able to understand who they are and what they bring to the table. Yeah. How they'll be able to crisply articulate things, be it in terms of their own skills, their own ability, is what would be the key differentiator. And again, I would pick on saying, do they have executive presence? Right? So that's the first one. Okay. How was the CV really put together? Was the second part of it, because you're going to be presenting to not just within the organization, you'll be presenting even to people, investors. Okay. If you're a PE equity firm led, you'll be talking to the PE equity. You need to have influencing skills where, not every time you would win things.
Right.
Yeah. And for all of these, you need to be very crisp, to the point, deliver what is needed, okay, and read your audience. And
right.
So those calls that would, for these 3 CVs will clearly tell you where they stand.
The points that you've mentioned, I think they take me to another discussion I had in my previous organization, where we spoke about, at least, especially for leaders, whether it's tech or non-tech, the 5 key criteria, 5 I's, if I may. Insights. What are the insights that the person can bring to the table beyond the simple work and the tasks they've done? What is the influence that they can have, whether it's on their own teams or across teams, across stakeholders, internal and external stakeholders? Is the person seen as being inclusive? Right? Do you include others along in whatever operations you're doing? I think the other 2, I'm still trying to remember or recall exactly, but it was around, one was inspiration. Are you able to inspire others to essentially, especially if you're a leader, to get the action that you intend to from different people? And I believe the last was more around impact in terms of actual business outcome and numbers. So that was an interesting framework. I think what you spoke about was similar in, of course, different themes. But any views on each of these parameters, especially, I'd say, inclusion, because I know that's a big theme of how Avalara in particular is known as an employer. We've seen tremendous, I think, drive when it comes to inclusion of different communities, whether it's on the basis of gender, whether it's on the basis of experience. But any comments on something like inclusion?
Yeah. So I will start off with a basic thing where, you could be a technical person, but you also need to have functional knowledge. Okay. So this is a very close overlap they need to bring in. They cannot say that I'm just a pure techie. That does not happen. Okay. What's a techie doing with the, the functional part of it or the business part of it? And now I'll tie this to the question you asked in terms about inclusion, right? So specific about Avalara. Yeah. So Avalara sells around 100 plus countries, and each of them are very culturally different.
Right.
Right. So you would need to understand that your customer has a very different kind of ask at each country. Yeah. And you cannot go with a fixed mindset there. So that's inclusion of, different kinds of thoughts and methods that people would work in. Okay. There are also women-led businesses. There are small SMEs who are out there, okay, who have the small ticket requests that they would bring in as compared to the enterprise or the mid segment. Now, for all of this is where you need to have the agility to think big and small, or to think left and right in terms of how you structure your own thoughts. And that's where inclusion becomes a mandate. It's not something that we're going to force or anything that's there. Yeah. So knowing your customers who are so varied will make you also ensure that you have a team which brings in as many different thoughts. Okay. Let me also add it up to the AI part of it, because disruption always comes outside the industry and never within the industry. Right?
That's interesting. Could you expand on that?
Yeah. Okay. So let's look at this, right? So you had taxi services. Okay. And a tech company like Uber came in and overruled it. Right? Yeah. You had your blockbuster video rentals, and Netflix came and overruled it. Yeah. And all these came outside the industry. Yeah. I'll give you a very interesting other insight. Today, insurance industry is really calculating, saying that if there is autonomous driving, what happens to car insurance? Just look at how different it is, right? Yeah. Insurance industry is going to be hit because of autonomous driving. Whom do you hold accountable?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I wish I had the answer.
Yeah, there is a lot of work happening on that, by the way. Yeah. So this is where inclusion of thoughts need to come in, and this is where you to be open and trying to see how you would, entertain these various set of things is the actual leadership thing that would come in. So being a true leader would need you to be extremely open, okay, and keep iterating. And the iteration cycles are getting very small and very intense. Yeah. So especially in the SaaS and the cloud industry, it's bloodbath out there. You could go and ask any sales guys in SaaS and cloud, it's bloodbath out there. Because a customer can turn off, like a Netflix service or like your music streaming service in 10 seconds.
Since we spoke about AI, what do you think, while of course AI will impact the nature of the businesses, specific to hiring and tech hiring, what do you think is the boon and the bane of AI?
See, you will need to be a learner, okay? Because today, code generation that is there is commoditized, right? So I'll give you very specific to how Avalara has pivoted in the last 3-4 months. We are literally testing, saying that, okay, we are going to start the interview, open your ChatGPT, show us how you're going to pull out code from it during the interview process.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. So that is where we would want to see that how you can optimize yourself and how have you also absorbed this new technology that is coming, because that's the future. I cannot say, I'm going to, ensure that you're not going to be using ChatGPT during the interviews and things like that are not the mindset that would work for us.
That's very interesting, actually. Yeah, because that's usually not the direction in which the coding skills of a software developer would get tested.
Yeah. So here is where, if they have used ChatGPT and if they have used proper prompts, you really get to know that, they have been agile in terms of their own growth and their own mindset, right? Because we know over and over, CTOs will come in and tell you that 10, 15, 20% of the code that is there in their products is all AI generated very soon.
Yes. Yes, it's already happening. So
it is already happening. So if that's the thing, your selection process needs to change. It would start right from your campus level, right?
I love this framework called the Glad Mad Hat, which is what is it in the tech talent space that you're happy about? What is it that you're glad about? What is it that you're truly mad about? Um, and what is it that you really wish the teams, the talent recruitment ecosystem they had if they were to change things up today?
What I'm glad is AI is here. Okay. Yeah, because, always and always, what do you think is the best gets again tested and the bar moves. Okay. So the bar raiser is here. So I'm very glad that it's here.
I'll take that. I'll remember that line. The bar raiser is here.
Yeah, the bar raiser is there. Okay. Now, while we think about AI, the next one would be actually parallel computing that would come in. And that is going to be even crazier than that, because you would literally have supercomputers at your home in the next decade. That is going to be a killer. Yeah. So I'm very glad of these technological advances that are there. Now, what am I mad? I would not mad.
You're a very calm person, I must say. Otherwise, so I can't imagine you being really mad at things. But please do give it a shot.
Yeah, what I'm looking at is, especially for India becoming a product kind of hub than a services kind of hub. Okay, I think over generations now we have moved, and I would sincerely hope our youngsters would start in terms of bringing out products which are global in nature. Yeah. So that would be the mad part of it, or the opportunity that I would really look at. Yeah. And the last part of it, there is excellent talent around, right? And we need to really quickly zero in on these set of people. Okay. How do you really get this talent? I think it's something that we really need to move and see how we could identify them. I'm okay to partner with you guys. I've always partnered with you guys. I've pushed you guys so hard always, and saying that how can I quickly zero in on those 3 candidates that you said would be having good resumes and we pick talent. I think that needs a total shift in how we approach the whole thing.
Right. So I think what you're talking about is efficiency of being able to spot the best talent without spending an inordinate amount of time or resources in doing so. All right, Anand, as always, it has been a pleasure interacting. This is a hugely learning podcast for me as well. And I'm sure it will be for all the viewers of this.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you again.
Pleasure, Anand. Yeah. You have a great day.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.